Hi, I wanted to welcome you to the Divorce Planning Podcast. I'm Carri Goldring, and I'm in the mortgage business, and I do planning pre-divorce for people who are either going to refinance their home, do an equity buyout, or plan to purchase a new home and make sure that everything in the divorce decree is worded properly and the numbers in the planning is taken care of so that you can go through the underwriting process smoothly. And I would like to introduce you to other people who are interested in the divorce planning process so you can get a real education of what's involved. Hope you enjoy. Hi, today I want to welcome Andrea Banfield, and we're going to talk about a very interesting, important topic that seems to come up all the time that I don't know if people are just getting a lot of advice from friends, or I don't even know how these rumors started, but we're going to talk about abandonment. And it could be abandoning your home, it could be abandoning your children. So Andrea, I want to welcome you and have you introduce yourself, and then maybe we could just jump in and have you start by explaining what abandonment means and then go into some detail.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. I am a attorney in Brighton, and I handle almost all matters related to family. So I do divorces, I do estate planning, probate litigation, custody. If it is attached to a family, I tend to do the legal work that surrounds conflict or assisting other people to get the positive side, get to the other side.
Perfect. And if someone said to you abandonment from a legal perspective, what does that mean?
So we get this question quite frequently, and parties will call us, a spouse, and say, if I leave the marital home, am I abandoning my family? And I really think it comes from there is a statute that's been on the books since 1931 that says if you leave your spouse and your children and you don't provide financially for them, that you could be charged with a crime. You'll hear, so I think that's where it really stems from. And there's other statutes out there that relate to family, like adultery and things of the like. And really, prosecutors, they don't get involved and prosecute people for abandoning their family. I think it was created in the Great Depression where people weren't taking care of their families properly. But the statute's still on the books. So people ask me, well, if I leave my home, will I abandon my family? And I say it's really a kind of a multifaceted answer. Are you leaving the situation because it's detrimental for your children and your spouse, for you to continue to living together, and that the conflict between the two of you is negatively impacting the family? Or I'll have people ask, am I abandoning my rights to a home if I leave? And the answer to both of those questions isn't really a simple black and white answer. Actions that are taken by any party in a divorce matter or contemplating divorce can impact you in many ways. So if someone's coming to me and saying, if I leave the marital house, am I abandoning my rights to that home? And generally it's not, but you abandon control. You're not in the home to make sure that it's being taken care of, that bills are getting paid. And so I don't always advise my clients to abruptly move out of the home without creating a plan and looking at the short-term and long-term implications.
That makes sense. I could just see two parties, both of them not talking to each other and both planning on leaving.
That could happen. And a lot of people will leave the house and not have a plan. And then one of the parties might destroy personal property, things of sentimental nature that they can't get back. And so I always say it's best not to leave unless there's really a risk of harm. And that divorce is not a race, it's a marathon, and we have to plan that marathon out strategically.
Very true. What if someone leaves the marital home what would you say if they ask, could I still come and go to the marital home as I please?
If there's no court orders in the case, they could come and go, but that could negatively impact your children. If it's a marriage with children, because the child's used to the stability of both parents being in the home. If a spouse without children leaves the home, there could be games being played, someone changing the locks to the door. By law, if you're married and you were living there, you can get back into back into the home, but it's not an ideal situation. It creates conflict when there isn't transparency. But in situations where you can't be transparent because of risk of harm, then certainly I would recommend to someone to leave the home.
And is abandonment a bigger deal when you have children than when you don't have children?
Yes, I think it is because of the children. If you look at it from a children's perspective, they're used to both parents being in the home. And then for someone to leave without any court orders, they're going to have to create a parenting schedule. There could be a tug of war with the children. And I just don't advise that to occur again, unless there's some type of underlying risk that there's a need for it in protecting the best interests of the children.
Right. So let's say you and I are married and we live in a home that you own. I have no legal ownership to the house and I want to move out. Do I still have some rights to that house in terms of dollars?
Well, that gets into the legal issue of marital property versus separate property. And we probably could talk for hours on that. But
Mm-hmm.
typically, the court, in making an analysis, has to determine if property is marital and separate. In both ways, there is potential for the non-owning spouse to get equity of that out of that house. The fact that you leave the house during the divorce proceeding or leading up to the divorce proceeding does not negate your ability to get some of that equity. And there's all different ways to get equity out of the home.
Okay, that's interesting. Kind of off topic, but this comes up too. Sometimes you have someone who owns a home prior to marriage. Then you get married, everybody moves in, right? Now you're getting divorced.
So if you are married and you're living in that house and you have a right to continue to occupy the house, in most police agencies are not going to remove the non-owning spouse from the home unless there's a domestic violence situation. A non-owning spouse can get equity in a house that their spouse owned prior to the marriage if there's certain criteria met. And that's probably another vlog, but just to touch on those things, it could be that they helped in improving the home, that they contributed substantially to the home during the marriage. So it's a real factual answer to that question. I always say if you leave, it's very difficult sometimes to come back, but short-term respite, going for a weekend, going for maybe even longer than a weekend, should not inhibit you to be able to get back into that home. There's really not a one-size-fits-all answer.
Right, which I guess makes it really tricky. And then
That's
sometimes I hear people will say, well, I was told that if I leave my house, the judge will say I don't have any right to the home, or they come up with all, these kind of the judge, the judge, the judge.
yes. Well, you'll find that judges have a lot of discretion in determining equity in a house, but judges are not going to immediately say that you don't have any equity in the house. That's going to be a trial issue. I think what you're talking about is if they move, can they move back into the house? That becomes really a gray area as to the length of time. Short term, yeah, you need respite. You're going to be able to get back into that house. Now, if it's been years your spouse could go into court and ask for an order for exclusive possession, that you have left the house for an extended period of time, that you've created a new household, and it's going to wreak havoc on the owning spouse's life. So it's really a factual answer. It depends on the facts.
And then I run into people who are still married and somebody wants to move out of the home to purchase a new home.
Well, I would always advise somebody who's in that situation to speak to an attorney, because typically in a lot of courts, they'll enter what's called status quo orders and require spouses to continue contributing to the marital estate as they did during their marriage. And so there's not enough money to go support two households. So what I like to see, and it's really works well with pre-filing settlements, is an agreement that we have decided to divorce. We're agreeing that one spouse can move out, the other spouse can maintain occupancy of the marital home, and how are the bills going to be paid? If you don't have an agreement, then it becomes a factual issue for the court. In the court, there's always the risk to say, well, you need to continue to contributing to the marital household. You did not have a need to create a new household. And so it really becomes a financial issue.
Yeah, and that gets really tricky, obviously.
It does. And costly.
And costly. And what else can we talk about or bring up in terms of abandonment?
Well, if you just look at the statute, and that's, the 1931, it's that you're not providing any support to your family. So if you leave and you're not supporting your family, that's going to impact you many ways with the divorce. Have you worsened the stability for your children? Will that impact custody and parenting time? So I think you need to be guided by a family attorney before you make any of those abrupt decisions. I understand divorce is very emotional, but take a pause, speak to an expert, and figure out what the best strategic plan for you to move out. But it isn't against the law for you to move out.
And when they talk about support, are they only talking about dollars, or are they talking about, like, I normally stay in the home and I take care of my children, or I'm the one who cleans and does the laundry? Or
so both could impact. So it could be the financial, that you're not providing the regular and consistent support that your families have, or that you've left the home and you've left the children behind, and that's disrupting their permanency, that they were used to you being a stable person in their home that helped them get off to school, that did their homework with them. All of those factors could impact custody. But custody is a 12-factor analysis, so there's a lot of different, aspects that could be argued, that you moving out negatively impacted the family, but it could be a positive thing. So I have seen where it has been positive to move out, because the animosity between the two parents was so high that was impacting the children.
that makes sense. No, it's such a hot topic, and it seems the one that people are very freeing to give advice on, more than a lot of other topics that come up.
I believe that, and the topic about what's marital and what's separate property, and if your name is only on the deed, is that 100% your asset? And we're an equity state in Michigan, so with an equity state, there's a factual analysis that the court has to make, and it's not a one-size-fits-all answer. So if anybody says, well, your name's on the deed, it's just yours, you really should speak to a family law practitioner and really go into an in-depth analysis of what equity you may have to pay or may not have to. There are some times when you don't have to pay any equity.
And that would have to do with, like, retirement accounts or things like that as well.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And That'd be a whole nother topic about
Another,
retirement. There's a passive appreciation. There's what's grown during the marriage, that we could go into all different paths here today. That's why
right?
family law is complex, and
It
and your
is.
and when your friends want to give you side chair advice, usually they're not delving into the facts, and facts are very important in divorce.
Right. And I think because it involves a family and all aspects of a family, you have to become an expert in a lot of different areas, as opposed to if you only concentrated on one type of law that was a little more streamlined.
Yes, family law is very multifaceted. If you do criminal law, here's the statute. Did you break the law? Where family law has usually each analysis maybe have 3 or 4 different factors, and it's not black and white.
I agree. I agree, which is why I've enjoyed so much being part of the team when it's, when I get called in to just work on that one little teeny piece of the mortgage and qualifying for a loan. It's always fun to get involved and be one of the puzzle pieces.
Yes, and you're a very helpful resource for us, is because the mortgage laws are constantly changing, and approvals and what your underwriter will do. So I'm always recommending to my clients, before they create they can look at what path they want to do, but is it feasible? Let's talk to a certified divorce mortgage broker and see, will their plan even work?
Right. Yeah, it's so true. There's so many sides. Well, your time was greatly appreciated. And I thank you so much for giving us some insight into abandonment, and I guess giving the audience a realization of how deep we can dig in all these topics.
Yes.
So anything else that you want to add, or do you want to give any contact information before we sign off?
Sure. Well, I have a firm in Brighton, Michigan. It's called Banfield Law and Mediation, and we handle all aspects of the family. And if you would like to contact us, you can contact banfieldcooling.com.
Thank you, Andrea. Appreciate your time. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I'm Carri Goldring, and if you ever have any questions regarding mortgage, feel free to give me a call or send me a text message, 248-420-4524. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day.